today as well. The other part of today that is of interest is there was this story today. Ross Dellinger, one of our listeners, showed this to me, and I went blank just now, damn it, on who sent this to me. But the Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12 alliance, which of course has been formed, could feature season-long matchups according to the commissioners of the conferences. And then, we just saw Oregon, Ohio State, and then we saw Washington at Michigan. And so the good news is that these aren't just going to be like early on in the year, but they'll spread them out. And I would love to see more. I'd love to see Oregon and Ohio State late in the year, or a non-conference game late in the year. Now, I understand why they're not. The SEC is always kind of, not everybody, but a lot of them have tucked the game back into the end of the year. That's a non-conference game that's at home. And usually
a rivalry.
Yeah, and either that or it's just somebody that's not very good. They're going to play 12 games. Other than the Big 12, whatever, conference championship, et cetera. So that's of interest, that they would spread them out a little bit. But you have to have all the conferences on the same page to do that. You have Florida and Florida State at the end of the year, non-conference game, correct?
Clemson and South Carolina, Georgia,
South Carolina, right? And so they're going to have some of those anyway with various conferences, but that'll be interesting to find out how many of those games they're going to play. Because the conferences, how much, I don't know this for sure. I know the Big 12 plays 9 because there's 10 teams, they play each other. The SEC changed it last year because they had to. There was no non-conference games. How many games do the other conferences play in conference? Is it 8? Is it 9? I don't know that. But they aren't going to, I don't think they're going to add more conference games.
No, they have to reduce to do this.
They might have to reduce it.
Yeah, no, they'll have to. I think, some will have to eliminate a conference game to make this work. So that's part of the scheduling snafu that they're having to kind of, the scheduling not they're having to unravel, but they've said, they're not canceling future matchups. So, if you have something on your schedule 2 years from now, that's still a go from all indications. And, the interesting thing about that is, it'll provide a lot of good matchups, but depending on how they schedule it, can you imagine an undefeated Big Ten champ all of a sudden having to go up against Oregon in the final week of the season? Now, with the playoff, you could lose that game and probably still get in. But if it's your second loss, it's a little bit dicier, because then it comes back around to what's the playoff format look like? And
it could have been your second loss earlier in the year, or it could be a huge win for you as people are trying to set themselves up for whoever makes the playoffs, whether it's 4 or 12. Ideally, that means the Big Ten, Pac-12 reducing their league games from 9 to 8. The ACC already plays 8, provides teams with 4 non-conference games rather than 3, 2 alliance matchups, and 2 against lower level of college football.
I was just about to tell you that.
Oh, you read it too?
Yeah, I was just waiting. Yeah. I ran through. I just picked 2 random schedules and counted them up. The ACC plays 8. The Big Ten plays 9. So the ACC wouldn't have to do anything. The Pac-10 would have to,
or the Big Ten.
The Big Ten would have to drop one. But I don't think in this regard that's that big of a deal if you're going to replace a conference game with. I think, and again, I also think that they need to redo the way that they do their conference games, so that as these conferences get bigger, like the SEC is 16, the Big 12 is 12 again, and maybe more in the future, that it's not 8 years to 10 years to 14 years between the times that certain teams play. I think they need to. I like the pod system. I like that, or at least like the idea of it. But where there's a little more rotational stuff and the rivalries mean something, there's a way to do all this. I think sometimes conferences get lazy. We talked to Mac about scheduling yesterday, and he said that, there's a lot of, why are you doing all this scheduling 10 years in advance?
Well, the NFL does it every year. They just play, hey, this is the division you're playing. You're playing these 4 teams from this division in the AFC, and then you're playing this division from the NFC. There's ways to do it. I think and it's not really going to be that hard for them to do. It'll just be a matter of where are their openings and where can they squeeze games in, and what games are, not going to be able to be canceled. Because again, they said that, they're not planning on wiping out a bunch of pre-scheduled games. So, the alliance is chugging on along, and the scheduling part's really the the part of it, I mean, in terms of what we've seen from the Alliance, it's been all scheduling pretty much since they have started to trudge forward. Now, obviously, when various meetings and things like that happen in legislation, they will be heavily involved in that as well, because that's another side of why they've joined together. But, yeah, the scheduling problem is a good problem to have. Hey, where do we fit in Oregon on our schedule? Hey, where do we fit in Washington and Michigan on the schedule? That's a good problem, rather than, where's this Alcorn State game go, or something like that. So it'd be interesting to see how they figure this out and how long it takes them to figure it out. But if we get more Oregon Ohio State games in Columbus, or now Ohio State goes to Autzen and plays out there, and that becomes regular things for fans, I think that'll be great for all those conferences involved.
From the Shooter TX, it looks like Franklin's going to USC. My bet is Penn State goes all in after Matt Rule. When that fails, they will flash the cash and steal Matt Campbell. And that's Shooter, and he's gotten some pretty good comments to us. Now, again, there's a long way to go, a lot of things to do. We're not trying to stir that up, but at the same time, well, it's out there. Obviously, yesterday, Luke Fickell, was it yesterday or Monday, tried to kind of pat that down a little bit, although his name's going to be a part of the mix as well. JT in Pikes Peak. We haven't heard from him in forever. Said, I don't care whatever Urban says, just make sure that Jacksonville loses this weekend.
Well, I think that's a pretty good shot. I think they're pretty good odds to lose pretty much every game this weekend. I mean, they've got a lot of work to do. Trevor Lawrence is very much a rookie right now, so I don't think too many are fearing Jacksonville on their schedule for Urban in year one.
Here's from Username, and Username had 2 or 3 other comments that for some reason were like, I don't know what happened, but Username, if there's only 8 games in the conference, get rid of divisions.
Yeah.
I read that and I was like, well, they don't want to lose conference championship game money. That's the only reason that there are divisions. Is the Big 12 still has a championship game despite the fact there aren't divisions. But the divisions allow you to play the game. The money allows you to make more money, or the game allows you to make a ton more money.
You could still just take the top 2 based on your scheduling formulas. I mean, and that's what people would want to see. That's what the Big 12 has been doing anyway.
The top 2 teams.
It's just the top 2 teams. So if the other ones did it where, I guess there might be some pushback for some teams from either side saying, well, what if you're the SEC East? Well, if the 2 best teams are from the West, well, that'd be one of the 2 best teams. You don't have to worry about it anymore. They're not that anymore, so there's no divisions. So it'd be one of the 2 best teams.
From Mike Terry, just throws in $20 on a super chat. Wow. By the way, on YouTube, 365 Sports, push the subscribe button if you haven't. We're closing in on 12,000 of you. Thank you.
I'm going to have 2 bowls of ramen noodles tonight. Yeah. Thank you.
And then also the like button. And some of you that don't like the content, that's fine. We want to hear from you as well. If you don't like it, then I don't know why you'd be watching us unless you're a masochist, but that's okay. Here's the thing. I never thought about the conferences and divisions and going down to 8 games. There really is no reason to have divisions if you're going to play 8 games. Unless it's then how do you come about your scheduling? You just do the same thing, right? How do you prevent, though, schedules from being top-heavy? Some that end up, let's say in the Big Ten, you play 1 or 2 teams you always play, and then you end up one year, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan.
Wasn't that Nebraska's first year schedule in the Big Ten? I mean, I'm not trying to bring it up, but
it wouldn't have mattered.
It happens. Yeah, it happens. I think
it
sometimes
also was a schedule last year that they changed because of COVID. Remember, Nebraska was outspoken, and they just said, "Okay, how about you lead off with Ohio State? And let's end this in a hurry."
Sometimes. I think you just, as an institution, realize that yes, you're going to take it on the chin, but it's cyclical. If you're the Big Ten and Purdue gets the poo end of the stick on the schedule one year, Ohio State's going to get it eventually. And that might be a year they lose 2 games.
Well, the thing about divisions too is the Big Ten, for example, they have a lopsided set of divisions. Mm-hmm. One division dominates, thanks in large part to Ohio State and Michigan State, by eliminating that, rather than Ohio State preventing a really good Michigan State team from getting into a championship game, they just play each other in a championship game. What would be better? Your top 2 teams that just so happen to be from this division, but you've got Ohio State can't play Michigan State because they're both in the East or whatever. So Ohio State has to play a far lesser team from the opposite division because we have to do division winners. Wouldn't you rather see Ohio State, Michigan State if they're the two best teams? So, yeah, it would make a better game. A division often forces you into not having as good of a matchup as you would likely have. It's kind of like the Pac-12, you're right? You see the divisions and what the South is strong, or the North might be stronger. And so rather than getting a Washington, Oregon in the Pac-12 title game, you get Washington versus the South, and the South winner, let's say it's USC, is not as good as the two teams in the North. So I think it's the elimination of divisions is better for your championship game. It's a better game. It's a tougher game, and should be a data point and whatnot.
Well, if the Big 12 had split off into 2 5-team divisions, say, and then they had some kind of weird 3-game, 8-team, 8 not playing everybody, then you have the option of Oklahoma playing like a 4-loss TCU team.
Or like K-State, and instead they play Oklahoma and Iowa State, and that's the way it should be,
Jacob Harrison, well, the NCAA did pass the Big 12 rule that allows conferences to have a conference title game with less than 12 teams, so why have divisions? But then Caden came up and said this, and Caden seems to always kind of have his thumb on it. Divisions are critical to travel budgets in a conference from the Rockies to Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Very good point. That's always, and he always seems to have incredibly good points.
But with the Big Ten, I mean, are they so spread out that would be as much of an issue? I mean, they're all kind of clumped together up there in the Northeast together.
So
Big
it would
Ten?
be.
Yeah.
Nebraska's probably the furthest west.
And Rutgers is the furthest
and
east.
Rutgers, Maryland would be the furthest east.
Yeah, that does make sense. But, yeah, just looking at what would be best for a championship game, what would be best for a matchup, what would be best to just kind of eliminate some of the hurdles. Yeah, I think the elimination of divisions would be good. But I'm glad that we have the audience that we have who have insight. And so, Hunter, you said – thanks for bringing that point up because it's a valid point.
It's a 22-hour drive from Nebraska to Maryland.
Man, we live in a big country.
1,400 miles, which in flight miles means not much at all. But you are crossing over what looks like about 5 to 6 states. And, of course, above Maryland, there's